Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Perspective. We'll be talking about India's cross-border assassination campaign, which we've seen as far as Pakistan is concerned, as far as the constant bout of interference, the attempts to interfere that we see happen from time to time from across the border. The ramifications of this overall also, and as far as India itself is concerned, of course, their political climate is this time, as far as Modi's election, the upcoming election campaign, their upcoming election, and overall the threats to minorities particularly, which seem to be increasing day to day, the environment of extremism that is building up, that is also being fueled because of the campaign. We'll be talking about this overall. We'll be talking about the ramifications of this on Pakistan, on minorities, on Muslims, on of course our territorial independence, our geopolitical, geostrategic position, all of that today on Perspective. I have with me Lieutenant General Raza Muhammad Khan, who's former chairman NDU. Thank you for being with us today. We have with us Naila Chauhan, who's former ambassador. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Salma Malik, who is an IR expert. Thank you for being with us today. And Dr. Adnan Sarwar Khan, who's also an IR expert. Thank you for joining us today. I'm going to start with General Sab. General Sab, this, we have also urged the UNGA, the Security Council, to address India's alleged new strategy, of conducting these cross-border assassinations targeting political opponents that we've seen even in Canada, United States. I think we've spoken about this before, but it continues to be extremely relevant because it's something that never ceases, even in the kind of build-up that we've seen, even in the kind of reaction that we've seen. So how do you look at it now, today, considering the current environment, considering, one can say that they have been rebuked. Can't we say that as far as Canada is concerned? Even the US has taken notice of it.
Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I think the various foreign media report, starting from The Guardian in early April and then the Washington Post and thereafter ABC News, and now the actions taken by Canada when elections are going on inside India have raised some very interesting questions. And the first one is whether these reports are a warning to the Modi regime to tell him that they are no more acceptable to the West and particularly to their friends. And it is also possible that the Modi government itself commissioned all these reports at this time to take political advantage of them. Because both Modi as well as their defense ministers have boastfully accepted their culpability in these actions. And it is actually, they are garnering more votes because he is being portrayed as a strong man, a bold man. So again, the other question that is raised is that if that is so, then I think he has deceived all these governments and his own people and the rest of the world. And it is also possible that both these sort of questions are part of what the timing aspect of these reports. Having said that, they have most definitely, I think, confirmed what Pakistan has always been saying, that the Modi regime is now a rogue regime. It is a radical regime which is now a threat to international peace and security, particularly in the subcontinent. And I think what is needed now is that I think the international community, particularly when it relates to Pakistan, then China and its friends, China and our other friends like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Iran, all of them are impacted by these activities, terrorist activities, and these countries have big economics, stakes inside Pakistan, and therefore I think there needs to be a regional and a collective kind of a response from our side to deter Modi from what he is doing. At the same time, I think it is important that the Modi regime, and particularly their raw leaders, are taken to the International Criminal Court for
General Saab, on that
cold-blooded
note,
murders.
let me include the other guests also. Naila, I hope you've been following what General Saab is saying. One, that he said that we need a joint response to what is happening. Do you see this kind of a joint, when we say joint response, we need, who do you think is going to be, of course, as far as our geostrategic position is concerned, as far as our allies are concerned, do you think we can expect that kind of a move, from us, our allies also, so to speak?
Well, Maru, thank you so much for inviting me to your this program. Yes, I was listening to General Raza. He had made an important point. So when you talk about collective, I think we have to bear in mind that our permanent representative in New York, United Nations, Ambassador Munir Akram, raised this issue at the UN platform. And he urged the Secretary General to implement plan of action for protection of religious sites in India as the country's rich Islamic heritage. He talked about Indian government sponsorship of terrorism in other countries, including Pakistan. So basically, we are now trying to, uh, use this situation to expose this Hindutva agenda and Modi regime's nefarious designs in the region and internationally. So when you talk about allies, I'm sure we'll have a lot of support to it because it's no longer just Pakistan's problem. It's become an international problem.
But when we say that it's become, let me include Dr. Salma in this also. Dr. Salma, when we say that it's become an international problem, I think there's really no two ways of looking at this. But the question is that when we talk about interests, when we talk about, of course, every state has their own interest at heart. And with regard to what India offers, the world offers, countries like America in terms of the market, in terms of their economic climate, so to speak, do you think it's going to be able to take that initiative further than what they've said?
Thank you so much for having me as part of this conversation. You see, India knows that it's the moment that it can exploit and enjoy for several reasons. One main reason being that India is being treated as a proxy against China. And this is something that India is willing to exploit as much as possible and enjoy as much of leeway it is receiving from the international quarters as it can happen. So long as this thing remains relevant, India or any of the actions that it has undertaken are kind of cautioned by the international community. And I absolutely agree with my previous speakers on this point that there is a very selective way of looking at what India is doing and how it can get away with it. The fact that we can take India to the International Court of Law and we can do several things now that they're actually very brazenly taking names and saying that we did this and we did that. It is happening because it's election time and Modi wants to show this face to the people that he is the muscle man, he is the man who means business. What he says, he implements them in action. And also that he has deep-seated interest into the quote-unquote enemy state. And whenever and if ever Modi wants to do anything with the quote-unquote enemy state, Pakistan, he can very well do that and get away with it. And this kind of a chest thumping approach is what is making him look like that Superman of India, the Muscle Man of India, the Bahubalis, and God knows what not, fictitious characters that they have cooked up with, who have these supernatural powers, who can do whatever they feel like doing.
Dr.
But
Salma,
here, these
it's
supernatural
also
powers are here
resonating.
because
It's also resonating with the extremist segment of the
yes, it
society at
is.
this time.
And that makes it very kosher because people are getting away with a lot of extremism, with a lot of hate sentiment, which at the moment for the Indians seems to be in the right tone and tenor. But in the longer run, it's going to totally destroy the Indian civil state and society. And once, God forbid, that happens, it's going to have very severe repercussions on all the neighbors, including Pakistan, as well as the international community.
Hmm. Do you think that I mean, we have to pity the two things together, right? We have to see the cost benefit of the situation. The world has to see. The world has to see what India offers them, but the world also has to see that we are looking at, this is potentially nuclear states, our region, as far as our geostrategic position is concerned.
And you see,
Uh, and that
internationally
itself,
also, exactly. Sorry, you were saying something?
and
Yes, please.
that itself also has its own ramifications, not only for Pakistan, India, for the region, but for the world. So
Absolutely.
do you think that the superpowers also, and America of course is very extremely important, is cognizant of this reality now?
Yes, America is very much cognizant of this reality, but you see, India is, for the moment, in the real time, it's not doing what we are looking at, and from the angle that we are looking at several things. And what we are looking at and how we are perceiving whatever is going on in India is the true picture. The international audience, mainly the USA, can also see what is happening. They also have concern. You may recall that once when there was an attempt on a Sikh leader in India, in the USA, after the two attempts in Canada, the US came down very heavily on the Indian government, and there was a lot of negative talk that happened. But because India is convenient to them and they are living in the exact moment, so they're fine with it. They feel that these are small interests, which, and of course, they have nothing to do with the Islamic world. They have nothing to do with Pakistan, because Pakistan's relevance for the moment is not viable anymore. So they feel that if India has been sublet the regional security and it's acting as the next security provider, what if we can't hurt China? We can hurt Pakistan through India. So they're fine with the larger picture. And whatever happens tomorrow, the repercussions that we are talking about, that is something that they will deal with when the tomorrow comes. And so for the current regime, it's living in the moment.
Right. I guess, of course, one has to contend it's quite short-sighted, and of course, it can have a spillover effect later also. Thank you, Dr. Salma. I know that you're short of time. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to go to Dr. Adnan Sarwar. Ji, Dr. Adnan, Raza Saab. General Saab, if you've heard what Dr. Salma said, do you think that we can today, we talk about the superpowers, we talk about, the overall afford to be this callous or this short-sighted with regard to what's happening in one of the most important regions of the world and what is brewing and clearly brewing when we look at the treatment of the extremists, extremist treatment being meted out to the minorities, when we talk about the overall build-up as far as India is concerned, when we talk about the interference that is happening, invariably in countries, and that is not just curtailed to our, to across the border like Pakistan. It is now, we've seen in India, in America. So, this kind of an attitude is, it seems, working for India.
I think the West, and particularly the United States, should not condone India for whatever it is doing, just to ensure that India is used, to serve its own to the West interests against China or others. I think that will probably be not acceptable to the world in general. But I think I'd like to, concentrate a little more on what I was saying about the actions that Pakistan and its friends can take. I was referring that these people who have been murdering innocent Pakistanis and citizens of other countries, they need to be taken to the International Criminal Court, and legal action should be taken against them, which could be joined by all the families of all those who have been murdered by Modi. And I think that effort needs to be supported by everyone. Secondly, uh, I think it is very clear that India has been laundering money to hire these contractors for murders inside Pakistan and abroad. And this evidence, I think, needs to be immediately brought to the notice of the Secretariat of the Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, to take punitive actions against India and to declare it, at least to put it in the either black or the grey list. That is the least, I think, that this evidence suggests. Uh,
Fair enough.
in addition to that, I think at the diplomatic level, uh, all this evidence, which has now been put forward by the international media and the one which Pakistan has, it has to be put in one consolidated dossier and shared with the world, particularly the members of the UN Security Councils and the important members of the OIC, to sensitize them about the gravity of the situation and how it is threatening peace and security and stability in the world, and particularly in the subcontinent. Also, it is important, that we revisit our strategy, to counter it defensively, because we are seeing that our defensive or relatively reactive strategy is really may not be as efficient. It is actually, I think, costly and very difficult for it to now eliminate terrorists. So, an offensive element has to be included in it to deter India from the low intensity conflicts, terrorism, and by its policy of hurting us through 1,000 cuts. This, of course, is going to be a political decision. And I'm sure, the political military leadership is aware of this and would consider this option as well.
Let me go to Dr. Adnan Sarwar Khan with this. Dr. Adnan, I hope you followed what General Saab has been saying, but he's saying, one, of course, ICJ as an option for us, along with those effectees that we see, as a cumulative action moving forward. Do you see that as a viable alternative? Move, not an alternative, but a viable move against India. Sorry,
Well,
Dr. Adnan, can you hear me?
yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much for the question. Actually, this is correct on the part of General Raza. He has been very thoughtful to mention ICJ or the rest of the forums in order to contain India. But then ICJ, you see, its mechanism is that if any country doesn't become a part of that, and that is not legally binding upon that. And just recently, something which has been the worst in the history, in fact, of many centuries, and particularly the 20th and 21st century, the first part of 21st century, genocidal warfare of Israel against the innocent women and children and old and young in Palestine has not been heard upon, while the ICJ judgment had come loud and clear that they had to be submitting its corrective measures within 1 month's time. So this is one thing that you see. It is said that, and it's a matter of what is famous or infamous realist theory that the countries of the world, though they would, in verbal sense, they would say that, well, they adhere to international law or part of that, much part of that, but they would keep on harping on the tone that their sovereignty and their core national interest is the most important one. But in doing so, they keep on harming their bilateral relations, their regional relations, their international relations. They're not truly a part of the global community as such, in so for some kind of respect which may be accorded to international law of this kind. So I would say that you see some countries bilaterally, not ICJ, but bilaterally, like United States and Canada, on which soil you see in June last year, Niger was assassinated in Canada, and similarly in United States also, one thing coincided of this type. If they exert enormous pressure, but unfortunately, the fact of the matter remains that the United States are also talking to India on even this kind of a brazen interference of killings on its soil, the superpower, you see, and Canada also a big country in its own right, you see, very, very cautiously and very passively. And it is leaving this matter to the internal investigation of India, which India would not do seriously, frankly speaking. So I think if this kind of a cumulative effect from countries like the big powers, United Kingdom and Canada and the United States becomes vocal, and they give some shut up call to India, which is unlikely, very unfortunate.
I think Dr. Adnan, one of the phrases that I think Dr. Salma used was that, you know, it's I think I can't recall the exact phrase, but the belligerence of India in the face of, you know, that they actually, it's a chest thumping kind of, you know, the way that they're glorifying it, the way that Modi is owning up to it, and we, you know, overall as far as this action is concerned, shows that they don't have any kind of fair, they have no kind, you know, they know that they will not be, like you said, rebuked, reprimanded, or, you know, called off. It's, of course, they have they have an economic clout, they have a market, all of those things. But when is the world interest going to override, you know, this economic interest of countries like, for example, the States, for example, like you said, the powers?
Right, Ms. Maroof, actually, once again, you have raised a very sensitive point, and its answer is not simple at all. But I'll try to address this to the best of my knowledge. And in fact, you see, India is trying to be over belligerent, and it also is trying to be a regional bully, and now a global one. It already had been acting as a regional bully in South Asia and much of the rest of the part of Asia, but now it is going beyond this and has the world global outreach and assassination. Probably it wants to show one thing, that Modi has become overconfident, and he has become very arrogant, and his arrogance is shown in the Indian state policies. And the confidence that, well, he is likely to win the third term also, and he wants to be a macho man in front of the electorates in India, also has to do something about it, and that he can strike at the dissidents of India in Canada and the United States or wherever. It has been interfering in Pakistan also, but this is not the way. For example, you see, Pakistan's some of the dissidents have been living since decades in England, have been criticizing the government of Pakistan's policies on this and that matter, but Pakistan has never gone to that illegal kind of extrajudicial killing in a foreign country. So this credit goes to Pakistan. Pakistan could also have done that, but it's not doing it. Wonderful. But you see, India, I'm again saying that if at all you see this economic interest is overridden by the countries that would be United States, England, G7, etc., that would be one great thing on the basis of a principle. Principle of treating all the countries equally, particularly on these terrorists. This is state terrorism straight away. So if United States and England and Canada and these countries, top-notch countries, are so vocal against terrorism, they themselves also have been the victim. So then why to let go India that way freely? So, I mean, he said that India is saying that it can go away with it. So this has been there, the psychological setup, mindset. And if at all you see just economic interest and strategic interest, and which is really the fact of the matter these days of international politics. But if this is somehow eschewed by these countries, which ought to be the leading country in this respect, they can just bring the change. But about the United Nations and ICJ and ICC, I think it would be difficult. So bilateral pressures of lowering down
it's a more conducive way forward as far as bilateral pressure is concerned. Naila, would you agree with that? You think that perhaps the options of ICJ or perhaps the going down that route may not necessarily give us the kind of results that we want to see, the kind of quick results that we want to see, and bilateral pressure, according to Dr. Adnan, may be the route to go forward, maybe the way to go forward. Would you agree with that?
Well, the thing is that it is true that taking it to ICJ may not be pragmatic, because we have seen it in Gulbuddin Yadid's case also. Until both parties agree to take the case to ICJ, ICJ would not do the hearing on it. But the fact of the matter is that India has done a lot of extraterritorial killings. It has now become a menace to international peace. So while the Western powers were betting on India as a balancer against China's rise, they realized that perhaps they were betting on the wrong horse. And Modi's brazen and belligerent approach, particularly in the context of his election, rhetoric, the narrative that Hindutva and BJP have been building for their people, at this moment, Modi cannot afford to be seen as weak. Consequently, his chest thumping and his belligerent approach will backfire against him. Munir Akram has taken it to UN with a logic, because you can have UN resolution against such extraterritorial killings. You can have UN resolutions condemning such behavior. India can be identified as a rogue state, and that is required to give India that shut-up call.
But Dr. Naila, when we say what can happen, unfortunately the parity, there's a very disproportionate parity at all, if one can say, in the world at this time. And of course, there are those countries that we've seen and we are looking at that can get away with so much and others can't. Of course, Kashmir is an example. Of course, what India is doing is another example. There are other examples, of course. Palestine, perhaps, also is a case in point right in front of us. In that kind of a climate, we have to look at what options are viable, what options are, going to work for us. And, cumulative action is something that General Raza talked about. Going for bilateral pressure is also something that we are talking about at this time. But what is it going to take for the world to react to this and perhaps, stem it before it becomes, more a bigger, a larger issue.
Yeah, exactly. What you have said is true, but this is not applicable here because these killings have taken place in Canada. These killings have taken place in USA. So it is the American government now that has done the investigation and has all the dossier. And they are very offended by Modi's, rejection of all these facts that were placed because at this moment, what is India doing? The first step is rejected. The second step is, oh, we'll look into it. Third is, oh, perhaps these were some rogue officers of certain agencies. But now Canada, USA, the Five Eyes, UK, Australia, New Zealand, they are all on one page as far as this is concerned. And when Justin Trudeau had come for G20 summit also, he had stated that it was not Canada he was talking about. He was talking about the Five Eyes having the evidence against Indian government involvement in these killings. So this is a different situation where all these countries are already condemning India. And now in Italy, they are going to meet for the G7 meeting. This issue will be raised there as well. As far as Pakistan is concerned,
But Naila, in
you
that
can
sense,
reinforce it in UN.
this is one of their own, right?
Sorry, say that again.
I'm saying in that sense, when we say that they're going to meet, India in that sense is one of their own, right?
Yeah, and there it will be told that it's wrong. There it will be condemned. There it will have to give reason. So, if that happens, it will further reinforce our position at the UN. And more countries will come forward to condemn Indian government's, Modi government's negative activities, nefarious activities, not only to destabilize the region, but also threaten the rule-based order of the world.
Let me go to General Sab. General Sab, do you agree? You think that this might be a time when there will be some action or taken against India? When this G5 meeting happens, and perhaps that we will see some rebuke, some form of asking them to own up to what's happened.
I think the brief answer is no. I think that is not likely to happen because India is very close to them, and I'm sure you have listened to the White House statement on the matter, where when a question on the subject was raised to them, so the reply had two components. The first component was that India is a very strategic ally, and secondly, the questioner was directed to the Department of Justice that they are undertaking the inquiry and further details should be sought from them. But having said that, I'd like to once again clarify what I stated about the legal means and measures for us as well as the international community. I did not talk of the International Court of Justice or ICJ. I was talking of the International Criminal Court, which is empowered, to hold an inquiry in all these allegations and thereafter, punish the perpetrators for heinous crimes which were committed by India in multiple countries. And because, this is now an international issue, so bilateralism is not going to work. It has to be a multilateral approach. And if this kind of case is taken to the International Criminal Court, then it will not be only by Pakistan, and it should be, either, officially taken by the governments of the United States, Canada, Australia, and others whose citizens were murdered. But it could also be taken privately, as I said, by the families, of all those people whose loved ones were murdered and killed. So that is one. The other aspect is that of how can we deter Modi, from continuing his policy, to hurt us, to hurt us. He's hurting the CPEC, he's hurting all our economic
There are
projects,
attempts to hurt,
and
yes. Ji.
and very soon, he will be hurting all the economic projects which are in the pipeline, which are with the special, investment facilitation council. So, as I said, you know, he has to be deterred. And one way of deterring is, I made a mention that instead of a defensive posture, we have to add the element of, an aggressive defense or an
Okay.
offensive defense. And secondly, our own defenses through the National Action Plan and the Provincial Action Plan must be augmented and strengthened by allocation of additional budgets, particularly to the provincial counter-terrorism departments of the police,
Okay.
and particularly to the governments of KP and Balochistan
General
to
Saab,
take
our
additional
own
measures.
getting, I agree, of course, I mean, that's a very pertinent point, getting our own, making sure that we are extremely, not that, we have shown Pakistan, all our armed forces, our police, all our security forces have time and again, ensured that India is not successful. And of course, like you are saying, we need to fortify ourselves provincially also, in the ways that you are saying. There's no doubt about that. But as far as internally India is concerned, I have little time. I also want to talk a little bit about that. As far as their internal climate is concerned, do you think that, this is the kind of extremism that has become, that Modi has become the, is spearheading, and he's become the face of, is also, going to have a spillover effect? It's a very real danger for the world. For the world to acknowledge that, for the world to, perhaps take steps to stem this is also a real problem. Other than, this rebuke we're talking about, other than their interference we're talking about, that this is an internal Indian matter, but it has very real potential ramifications for the world.
Absolutely, the world must take cognizance of this. It is in their interest as well, in the interest of the friends of India, to appropriately advise it and pressurize the Modi government that they have to change the treatment that they are meting out to their own minorities, because otherwise, there can be an internal kind of implosion inside India, and that will be neither good for India, nor for the subcontinent, nor for the friends of India. And I think Modi is doing this, to garner votes, as I said earlier, because of all these things. And I think once he wins now the third term, I hope at least now, the West will be able to prevail upon him and tell him that enough is enough, and he should not, hurt the national interest of India itself by pursuing the policy which he has been doing in the past.
But General Saab, there's also, that kind of, even people within India, there is a fragment, perhaps it's a very small one, the intelligentsia, the people who are, the thinkers, relatively, the writers who are moderate, who are very cognizant of it. They've also written about it. But their voice is also continuously being silenced. Isn't that true?
Yes, that's right. I think they are very conscientious reporters and people, from the Indian media. They are bold people, and many of them do not care, from to what happens to them. But I think they are very few, and I think the BJP has enormous power, both financial as well as legal, to silence them. And I think this again needs to be taken very seriously by the human rights committees and councils, by the unions and organizations of journalists all over the world, and also by the big powers.
Right, fair enough. Thank you so much for being with us. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Lieutenant General Raza Muhammad Khan, thank you for joining us today. Naila Chauhan, thank you for your very valuable input. Dr. Salma Malik, thank you for joining us. Dr. Adnan Sarwar Khan, thank you for being with us today. Overall, of course, it is time that the world acknowledges the effect of Indian politics, the effect of Indian foray into other territories, which is extremely dangerous. We've also seen the kind of reaction that has come from Canada, that has also, at least there is acknowledgement as far as the US is concerned. Will there be a step forward? Will a rebuke follow the kind of activities that the Indian government has clearly found involved in? There is irrefutable evidence of Indian play into other countries' territories. And that itself necessitates action. Let's hope that we will see that kind of reaction. Let's hope that the world will acknowledge the kind of extremist political climate that exists within India, that is being perpetuated even as we speak, which will and can have a potential spillover effect. Thank you so much for joining us today on Perspective.